Hey everybody, welcome back. David Yon and the stunning Miss Lady Pop Hunter here with another discussion. And today what we are talking about is an alternative in the collecting market, because as people reach even harder for nostalgia from the 70s, the 80s, and even the 90s now.
Yeah, because the 90s is 40 years ago. 30
years ago.
1980.
It just feels like 40 years.
40 years.
But as people
30.
reach back for this stuff, they want it so bad. They want a piece of that. Even people who didn't grow up in those eras are fascinated with them, because things now don't feel right, but those eras did. And they want a piece of it. And a lot of collecting, like you see the stuff that's behind me here, this stuff can get very expensive.
Yes.
When you're collecting vintage comic books, when you're collecting action figures, lunch boxes,
Lunch boxes.
So because some lunch boxes aren't that much, but and also condition means a lot, just like with comic books, mostly lunch boxes can be very expensive. But there are alternatives. There are alternatives. There are things that you can go out there and collect that are not going to break the bank. Yeah. It'll be a lot easier. And we brought up lunch boxes, but there is an alternative to that in the form of TV trays, for example. And we have a few here. She collects these.
Yeah.
These are tin, or not tin, but steel pressed.
And we're talking about things you can buy that are vintage. That's not that expensive.
Yeah. These are not expensive.
They're not
at all.
expensive, and it also adds variety to your collection. So maybe you're heavy on action figures, but you want to venture off into something else.
Yeah.
These items will do it. And like with the lunch trays, they're just like the lunch boxes. You can find one for pretty much every cartoon or TV show that's out there.
Yeah, and the artwork is usually identical to a lunchbox.
Yeah.
It matches, or it's completely unique to the tray. But, I mean, you went and tried to get a Batman 89 lunchbox, you're going to pay an arm and a leg. But something like this, you'd be surprised how cheap this is.
Yeah, you can usually get
Nobody's collecting
lunch
these.
Trays for under $20.
And you could hang it like right on the wall like that, or across the top of your room.
Yeah.
You can put those up. These are great. And another alternative, and she has one here, these waste baskets. These metal waste baskets, often either the same litho as a lunchbox, or with a unique lithograph. And these are so inexpensive, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Nobody wants these, and there's tons of them available.
And again, they're a great alternative, and they add variety to your collection. So I've heard people say, I was looking at something else. I've collected the entire line of this, that, and the other, and I want to get something else, but I don't know what. Yeah, or I've heard people also, they say, well, I want to collect vintage, but it's so expensive.
Not always. There's a lot of vintage stuff that is not expensive. Another great example, vinyl records.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I don't want to collect records because that doesn't fit with my collection. Yes, it does. And something like this, I mean, I often see dealers at comic shows with boxes full of these.
Yeah, and they're really cheap.
They're like $10 sealed.
Very
often.
Sealed.
This one is sealed, and I think we paid $10 for it at a comic show just recently. They're not expensive. And other types of vinyl records we collect. We have a record player, and we collect vintage rock and roll, like Ronco records and things like that. If they're usually very cheap. Vinyl records are usually very inexpensive, unless it's sealed and something particularly rare. Here's another one, the 45s, and I mean, this is probably worth like $1. People are not looking for this stuff, but it's a nice addition. It fits. With this also is 8 tracks, cassette tapes, VCR tapes, VHS cassettes, Betamaxes, even laser discs have been forgotten about. Unless it's, and I know people are like, oh, well, they're grading those. Yeah, sealed perfect examples are being graded and being sold for quite a bit.
Yeah.
If it's open, nobody cares. You can get them for 10 cents a piece at most thrift stores.
Yeah.
They don't even want them. They don't want to give them away to you. And we have those too. We have a few VHS cassettes because, you know, the artwork on them and things like that. If she's got the
89 Batman
VHS tape.
Because I watched it on VCR tape when I was a kid. And I was at, I don't know what thrift store, but they had one. Great condition. I bought it for like $0.25. I'm not going to watch it, but I have it to put on display with my 89 Batman stuff. So it's just another piece to go along with it. And also, if you collect mainly newer stuff, but you just want to add a splash of vintage in there, this is a good way to incorporate and merge the two.
Yeah, because they're really cheap. Even the laser discs, and I was surprised how inexpensive, because I looked at that just recently. Nobody wants those. Nobody uses them.
Yeah.
And that stuff was amazingly expensive back in the day.
I know. Laserdisc was like $200-$300, wasn't it?
Yeah, and even the VHS cassettes where you're thinking like, oh, I picked that up, I can get that for 10 cents, $0.25, 50 cents, whatever. Back in the day, they were hovered around $100 a piece for VHS cassettes.
Then it finally came down to the $20-$30 range.
Next we could talk about is children's books. Children's books, again, this is a genre of collecting. You can get vintage children's books for a song. Nobody is looking for them. They're inexpensive, they're interesting, and you can buy them in bulk often. She bought an entire lot just recently of various children's books for a song, really. It was so cheap. And again, nobody, like I said, this is an area where people that just don't seem that interested. They just don't seem to care. They're not looking back. But especially when you were a kid, you had this stuff.
Yeah. And you can find a lot of these children books at the thrift store.
That's true.
In the children book section. Because I go through there and I look all the time because I'm looking for certain books. And I find it. And some thrift stores are ridiculous. I went in one yesterday and they had a whole set of Winnie the Pooh books and they wanted $5 each. And I'm like, you're out of your mind.
Because we know we can find it for less.
Right. But if other thrift stores, they got children's book for 10 cents, 15, 20 cents sometimes. So, you know, that's really cheap.
Puzzles.
Well, you got these magazines, children's magazines. Vintage
magazines you can often find in bulk for next to nothing. And these are highlights. And we just... if you were growing up in any time between the 40s and the early 90s, these were always sitting in like doctors and dentist offices as a kid, you know. And so I got a pile of these. I got about almost 30 of them for 10, I think $12.50 plus postage.
Yeah, and I had bought a set, and it were all of the states, and another set had like 2 decades in it, and super cheap, really cheap.
And only certain magazines you can often find in bulk, even Mad Magazine, Crack Magazine, used condition, not perfect. Because if they're in really good condition, somebody's going to grade them, and they're going to get money. But used, not, you know, reader copies, not in bad shape, you can get those really cheap, and there's a lot of nostalgia there. Next, meal prizes.
Oh yeah.
From McDonald's Happy Meals. Yeah, and someone just gave her this recently, and this is from Life with Louie.
Mom and Dad.
Yeah, Mom and Dad on a little bike there, and this is a Hardee's kids meal prize, actually.
Yeah.
And Hardee's, Burger King.
Pizza Hut used to do
Pizza Hut.
Prize.
I remember particularly, and I was thinking about looking for them. Pizza Hut had the Ghost Casper the Friendly Ghost hand puppets. Too small for even a kid to get his hand into.
Oh, wow.
But they were cool, and they glowed in the dark.
And Taco Bell even had kids prizes.
Yeah, everybody thinks McDonald's, but they all did it. Other types of promos and prizes, like I have the Star Wars on my Star Wars journey. I talked about the Burger King Star Wars trading cards and sticker sets and things, and a Frisbee they gave away. That stuff is so cheap because they made so much of it. They made millions and millions of these things, especially the meal prizes, and you can still go online and find them for a really decent price most of the time. Of course, the further back you go, the more it's going to be, but the closer you get to the late 80s and especially the early 90s, that stuff is so inexpensive, and it's worth taking a look at for nostalgic pieces to fill out your collection with. Puzzles. Puzzles are a cheap one. I got this one. I'm a big like 70s era Sesame Street fan. I probably couldn't get like $5 for this if I wanted to sell it. But this is vintage. It's from Milton Bradley. I mean, this is pre-barcode. That's how old this is. Frame tray. She loves frame tray puzzles. And there's an image on the back of these bigger ones. And that's just really cool. Watch out it doesn't fall out.
And you can get these for your various superheroes, because I have some Masters of the Universe ones. I have them on the wall right now.
And even those are not expensive.
No. You can sometimes find a lot of them with like 4 or 5 in them for like more. $20.
Yeah, you buy a bulk of frame tray puzzles.
And we found some recently at, this one don't have a picture, at the thrift store for $3. I think it was like 8 of them.
Including 2 Masters of the
Universe ones. But they were like $3.
And it's just amazing to me. And what I've noticed also about the frame tray puzzles is that the art that's on them is completely unique to the frame tray puzzle. You won't find this picture really anywhere else. They did it specifically, unless it's from a scene, like that's a scene from a book.
And that was on a movie, on one of the specials. That scene where Pooh got stuck and they had to pull him out.
I remember. He was stuck in Rabbit's house.
Yeah.
But they are so inexpensive, and she likes to put these up on the wall.
Yeah.
She hangs them up like a picture. And it looks nice. It fits nicely.
Yeah, with the whole theme of what we got going on.
Next, another one is decorative glasses. This was a huge thing, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like you see, here's the, and this was actually a store display.
Yeah.
Because they put the Slim Jims in them. The store would get that for free. These are not expensive.
I bought this at a flea market.
Yeah.
It's heavy.
It is.
It's
at a flea market. They're not expensive. That's actually a Deca cup. This is still factory sealed. Santa Claus Deca 70s. It's not worth much. These are really inexpensive. Glass sets from Pizza Hut, from Taco Bell.
You got this cup.
Yeah, and that was a mail order from General Mills, Star Wars. They don't cost a lot.
And sometimes you can find them at the thrift store.
Yeah, and they're interesting, and they're very nostalgic, because that was a big cultural thing. I think 50s all the way until the late 80s, that was a big thing. Early 90s too, because I remember when, was it Burger King was doing, Burger King had the Batman glasses, I think. Or was it McDonald's?
I don't know.
They had the Fred Flintstone glasses when the movie came out, and they had the Batman glasses and stuff like that. You can still find those really cheap. I think what offsets it is the postage, and part of the fact that postage rates keep going up drives some of that pricing down quite a bit. Novelty items, what I mean by that is like banks and toothbrush kits and things like that. Like, this is made by Hasbro, and this is like from the 80s. They made these in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, Hasbro. Figural banks. And this one is wrapped. They also come boxed. I do have boxed examples around here. Figural banks, not worth a whole hell of a lot for the most part. Even when you're doing the Hasbro character ones, Flintstones, Popeye, whatever, they can be very difficult to find and still not very expensive.
Yeah.
People are not looking for that kind of stuff. So figural banks, toothbrush kits like Snoopy toothbrush kits, Mickey Mouse, things like that. Certain ones like if the He-Man toothbrush kit might be expensive, but most other character kits and banks, figural banks and things like that, really not in demand. Nobody's really looking for them. And that applies also to electronics, because they made figural clocks for advertising purposes.
Oh, you have one, but you can't see it.
Yeah, I can't get them out. But
it's plugged in and it works.
Figural clocks, like a Pillsbury Doughboy clock, for example, or figural radios. Transistor radios was a big one. There's a lot of that out there. Transistor radios, like the one that I was looking at just recently was a Charlie Tuna radio from the 70s. They don't sell for a lot. Things like that, electronics, watches, figural telephones.
Yeah, usually, like the Garfield.
Are not that expensive. I got one I can show you here real quick, because I have this one just sitting here. That one is this is actually a telephone. And this is a manager's telephone from McDonald's from the 80s. They're usually not that expensive. They're really not. Other types of items like figural cookie jars are not that much. I know, again, I pick through eBay a lot, just looking for interesting things. The 80s Keebler Elf Treehouse cookie jar, mint sealed, probably not even $50.
Didn't you have one of those?
No, we were looking at one once,
okay.
But we didn't get it. But they're not a lot. They're usually pretty cheap. Other types of paper goods like coloring books, party supplies. Most collectors are not that interested in it. And you're like, well, what am I going to do with the coloring book? Well, it is nostalgic. I think adults buy coloring books more than kids now.
Well, they have the adult coloring books. And you might can color some of the pages if you color well.
If you want to,
and frame it and put it up.
And the cover might be very nostalgic, very unique. So things like that. And like I had mentioned, party supplies are pretty inexpensive. Paper plate bundles and things like that. There is a person I know that likes to collect the paper plates, like, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Brave Star, stuff like that. They get and they get it sealed, a bundle of like however many come in, I'm not sure, 8, 10 or whatever. It gets them like $5, $7, $10. They don't cost a lot. They're pretty cheap. And then, and finally, I guess, unless you can think of something else off the top of your head here, board games.
Yeah.
There are some expensive board games. Most of them are not that expensive. They're interesting, even if you're not going to use the board game. Some people might want to set it up if it's really ornate. Yeah. But usually they just want it for the cover art on the board game. They can be tough to display because they take up a lot of space. Most people just end up with them all stacked, and that's just kind of pointless. But if you have a couple of board games you'd be interested in that you want to show the face of, they're usually not that expensive, with a few rare exceptions. And again, part of the reason is because of the balance of shipping. Because it's so long, it's an awkward shape, and there's an overcharge that's going to be put on it by the post office. It's going to drive that price up. And so that means that the price has to come down to match how much the seller's asking for shipping. But honestly, like if you went to a flea market, most board games, thrift store, most board games, unless it was something unique, I wouldn't expect you to pay more than $10 or $15 for.
Not even that much.
Yeah, vintage. You know what I mean. If it's like complete and it's in nice shape, no broken corners, you can compromise. but like I said, for the most part, they're not that expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there are alternatives out there. If you want to just add variety to your collection, or you want to start something new, a new rabbit hole to jump down, if you will. You got some ideas, or just add some nostalgia into it, because again, a lot of people collect only new, but you might want to put some vintage splashes in there. So those are some things you could do.
And it's nice to help break things up too,
Yeah.
as an eye catcher, because you see we have mostly toys and action figures, but I've got the Remco McDonald land. I've got the whole set, and then right in the middle of that, here standing this Ronald phone. It's like, what's that?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
It's a conversation piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
any thoughts? Or absolutely other suggestions?
Yeah.
Because
more suggestions is great.
People might be watching that think it's an interesting concept, and maybe you'll inspire them. You might inspire us. You might bring something up that we didn't think of. Another one is figural watches.
You said watches.
I did say watches? Oh, okay.
Did.
Because that was a big thing too in the 70s and 80s. Watches that look like, especially from advertisers.
Yeah.
You know, Raid Bug and
I know they had the Mickey Mouse and a Garfield wristwatch, and then they had
wristwatches for everybody.
Yeah, and then they also had the one where it pops up, like you hit the button and it was digital, and the time part would pop up, and then you just press it back down.
Oh, okay.
I had one of those.
But I know a lot of advertisers did it, like Pillsbury Doughboy did it, Jolly Green Giant. It was a very popular thing for a while, and most of those haven't gone up very much, as well as cereal prizes. But again, because they've gotten away from cereal prizes.
I don't think they even do cereal prizes anymore.
Of course, this is another one where the further back you go, the more expensive it's going to get. A cereal prize from the 60s is going to cost more than one from the 80s, but this is another area where they made millions of them. So most of them aren't that much.
I see some people, they collect the cereal boxes. Because, you know, sometimes, especially on the back of the box, they would change the activity. Or some people just want cereal boxes from the 80s, from the major cereal companies.
Believe it or not, though, most of the cereal boxes can fetch quite a bit.
Oh, really?
They really can, because none of them were saved. The cereal
That's
boxes
true.
themselves weren't saved, but the prizes were. That's why I brought up prizes.
Oh, okay.
But most cereal boxes, if you went back and you wanted to find the Ralston Ghostbuster cereal box with the hologram face on it, or the old G.I. Joe box, or 70s or 80s monster cereal boxes, it can start getting up there.
Okay. Well.
Hey, it's fine. That is fine. But again, if you have any suggestions or ideas, feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section down below. Please do give the video a thumbs up if you got something out of it. Hopefully that inspires someone.
Yes.
Share it if you can. Subscribe if you're new, all that good stuff. Check out some of our other videos. We are all in nostalgia here. We do a lot in the realm of looking back and reminiscing. So if that's it, then what more can I say but thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon.